Welcome to another deep dive. This time, we're going to tackle a concept that's always kind of fascinated me. It's intriguing and maybe a little bit unnerving at the same time, and that is evil.
Ooh, that's a good one.
Yeah, we're going to use excerpts from Wikipedia's evil entry, and that's going to be our springboard to really explore how different cultures and different philosophies grapple with this idea of evil. And get ready for some serious mind-bending, because we're going to go way beyond bad guys wear black hats.
Absolutely. I think this will be interesting because we're going to unravel how different cultures throughout history have wrestled with defining and understanding evil. It's a journey that I think will challenge some of our assumptions and also kind of reveal some surprising complexities that are kind of hidden beneath the surface.
So the Wikipedia article starts with a simple definition of evil, basically being bad or inflicting unnecessary pain and suffering. Seems pretty straightforward, right? But here's the first twist. Is evil the opposite of good, like two sides of a coin, or is it the absence of good, like darkness is just the absence of light? I mean, thinkers have been debating this for ages.
That's exactly right. And that's, I think, one of the first hurdles that we encounter when we try to pin down this concept. It's so slippery. And the Wikipedia article throws another curveball at us right away. And that is that evil comes in different flavors, right?
Okay.
There's the personal intentional evil, like a villain plotting something nefarious. And then there's natural evil. Think earthquakes and disease, these any kinds of events that cause so much suffering, but we don't necessarily perceive a mastermind behind them. And then, of course, there's the supernatural or demonic evil that many religions address.
Yes. Okay, so right off the bat, we're seeing that evil isn't this one-size-fits-all thing. It can be an action. It can be a force of nature. It can even be something, beyond our world. So to really wrap our heads around this, I think we need to look at how different cultures have tackled this whole conundrum. And the Wikipedia article dives into some fascinating examples.
It really does. And one of the most striking contrasts, I think, to Western thought comes from Chinese moral philosophy. They view evil as a disruption of this cosmic order, emphasizing social relationships and duties. And in this context, I think one of the most intriguing concepts is the 10 abominations.
The 10 abominations. That sounds pretty intense.
It is. These are crimes that are so heinous, they're essentially beyond pardon. So imagine actions that strike at the very heart of their social structure, like plotting a rebellion against the emperor, or even more shocking to us, like harming a family member, which violates this, very core principle of filial piety for them. And I think these examples really highlight how their understanding of evil is really deeply intertwined with their social values in a way that's very different from our own.
Wow, that's a world away from how we might typically think about evil in our more, individualistic Western cultures.
Absolutely.
It's a powerful reminder that morality isn't always, black and white, and what's considered evil can really vary dramatically depending on your worldview.
Precisely. Now let's kind of shift gears a little bit and explore how Abrahamic religions kind of tackle the concept of evil, because they've obviously had a huge influence on Western thought. And each religion has its own nuances, and that's where I think it gets really interesting.
Okay, lead the way. I'm curious to see how these different faiths approach this.
Well, the Baha'i faith offers a particularly unique perspective. They believe that evil doesn't actually exist as a separate force. Instead, they view it as the absence of good, much like darkness is simply the absence of light.
Oh, okay. So it's not this epic battle between good and evil forces. It's more about the presence or absence of something positive.
Exactly.
Interesting.
Then you have Christianity, where the concept of good versus evil is very deeply ingrained, largely shaped, of course, by the Bible. And the devil, as this embodiment of opposition to God's will, he plays, of course, a very central role. So this dualistic kind of struggle between good and evil is really a cornerstone of Christian theology.
And what about Islam? How does that approach evil?
Islam actually doesn't have this idea of absolute evil like you see in Christianity. They emphasize God as the source of everything, both good and bad. And what truly matters are a person's free will and their actions, not some kind of inherent evil nature.
So it's more about the choices that we make rather than being born good or evil. That seems to resonate with the idea of personal responsibility, which is a big theme in Islam.
Absolutely. No, in Judaism, we see this emphasis on free will again, but there's also this concept of the Yetzer Hara. It's this inclination to do evil that exists within us all.
The Yetzer Hara. It's like that little voice tempting you to make the less than stellar choice.
It feels very human, this struggle between our better and our worse impulses.
It's presented as a very universal human experience, something that we constantly grapple with, and it ties into the Jewish emphasis on actively choosing good over evil. Now, before we move on, we can't forget ancient Egypt. They had some pretty vivid ideas about evil as well.
I'm all ears.
Yeah.
Ancient Egypt always seems to have these larger-than-life stories.
Well, picture this. They personified evil as Isfet, a force of chaos and violence. And this was embodied by Apep, the serpent god. So imagine this giant serpent constantly trying to destroy order and kill the sun god Ra. So it's this ongoing cosmic battle between order and chaos. Okay, that's definitely epic. You've got serpent gods, battles for cosmic order. I mean, you can't get much more dramatic than that. It seems like, many cultures personified evil as this, tangible force to be reckoned with.
It's a recurring theme for sure. But as we've seen, the specifics of what constitutes evil can vary wildly. Now, if we journey to the East and explore Indian religions, we encounter even more fascinating perspectives.
I'm ready for another dose of wisdom from the East. What do they have to say about evil?
Well, in Buddhism, the core duality isn't actually good versus evil, it's suffering versus enlightenment. And their focus is really on understanding and overcoming the root causes of suffering, which they call the three poisons: desire, hate, and delusion.
Those three poisons sound awfully familiar. Like maybe we all have a little bit of experience with those regardless of our spiritual beliefs.
Absolutely. They're seen as universal human experiences that kind of keep us trapped in this cycle of suffering. Now, Hinduism, in contrast, has a very clear division between good and evil, as depicted in their epic tales like the Ramayana and the Mahabharata. These stories are full of, gods and heroes battling demonic forces, and these divine incarnations are restoring balance to the world.
It's like this cosmic dance between opposing forces with the ultimate goal of restoring harmony. And probably a few epic fight scenes thrown in for good measure.
Exactly. And finally, we have Sikhism, which offers a more nuanced and evolving view of evil. What initially appears as a straightforward battle between good and evil actually becomes less defined as a person grows spiritually.
Evolving? That sounds intriguing.
Well, they have this concept of the five thieves, which represent these vices like greed, lust, and ego. But they emphasize that these vices aren't just out there, they reside within us. And the path to overcoming them isn't about battling some external evil force, but through cultivating these virtues, like selfless service and meditation.
So it's less about good versus evil and more about recognizing the potential for both within ourselves and then actively choosing the path of good. That's a pretty powerful message.
It is, and it highlights this importance of personal growth and this interconnectedness of all things.
Okay, so we've journeyed through a whirlwind of cultural and religious perspectives on evil, from disruptions of cosmic order to the absence of good, from serpent gods to inner demons. It seems like every culture has wrestled with this concept in its own way, but it kind of raises a crucial question. With all these diverse interpretations, is there even a universal definition of evil, or is it all relative?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And it's one that has puzzled philosophers for centuries. C.S. Lewis, for example, argued that certain acts, things like murder and rape, are kind of universally condemned. But even those acts can be perceived differently depending on the context. Things like killing in self-defense or culturally accepted forms of violence. So that gets very, very murky very quickly.
So while there might be some shared understanding of certain acts as evil, there's still a lot of room for cultural variation and interpretation.
Absolutely. And this leads us to another kind of debate in philosophy, and that's this idea of the broad versus narrow concepts of evil.
Okay.
So a broad view defines evil as, any pain and suffering, whereas a narrow view focuses solely on morally reprehensible actions. And each has its own set of challenges.
So if we take the broad view, wouldn't even something like accidentally stubbing your toe be considered evil?
That's one of the problems with the broad view. It doesn't effectively differentiate between these levels of severity. But then, of course, the narrow view also has its limitations.
Okay.
Because defining what is considered morally reprehensible can be really subjective and differ widely between cultures. So again, we run into these problems.
This whole discussion makes me wonder if evil is even a useful term. It seems so loaded and potentially misleading.
Yeah, that's a valid point. Some argue that it's an outdated term that can lead to oversimplification, especially when it's used to label entire groups of people.
It's like using a sledgehammer when what you really need is a scalpel.
Exactly.
But on the other hand, you could also argue that understanding evil is actually crucial for preventing it.
Exactly. And there's a whole psychological perspective on evil that we haven't even touched on yet. Carl Jung, for example, saw evil as this kind of shadow side of the human psyche, something that we tend to project onto others rather than confront within ourselves.
Oh, interesting. So maybe the key is finding a way to talk about evil constructively without falling into those traps of oversimplification and judgment.
I think you've hit the nail on the head there.
Okay.
Recognizing nuance, acknowledging different perspectives, and really focusing on understanding the motivations behind harmful actions, I think are all essential.
It sounds like we need to be very careful about how we use this term.
Absolutely. And this leads us to another fascinating debate, and that is, can we call a person evil or only their actions? Is evil something inherent in an individual, or is it really about their behavior?
That's a tough one. I imagine there are some very strong opinions on both sides of that argument.
There definitely are. Some philosophers believe that labeling someone as evil is counterproductive and even dehumanizing. Others argue that some individuals demonstrate a consistent pattern of harmful behavior that really does kind of warrant that label. So it's an ongoing debate.
It's like the age-old question of nature versus nurture. Is a person predisposed to evil, or are they shaped by their experiences?
That's a great way to put it. And then you have fascinating perspectives like that of M. Scott Peck,
Okay.
the American psychiatrist who described evil as militant ignorance. He saw evil not as simply bad actions, but as a particular mindset,
Interesting.
a way of relating to oneself and the world.
Militant ignorance. Now, that's a term I haven't heard before. What did he mean by that?
Well, Peck argued that evil people engage in this persistent pattern of self-deception. They project their own darkness onto others and refuse to acknowledge the harm that they cause. And he saw this as different from sociopathy, where there's a genuine lack of conscience. This is about, according to Peck, willfully blinding yourself to the truth.
Wow, so for Peck, evil isn't just about the things you do, but the state of your mind and how you choose to see the world.
Precisely. And this brings us to the end of part 1 of our deep dive into evil. We've covered a lot of ground from basic definitions to cultural interpretations, and we've only just scratched the surface.
It's been a wild ride so far, and I'm really eager to see where we go next.
Well, in part 2, we'll delve even deeper into the philosophical and psychological dimensions of evil. We'll explore the question of whether evil is necessary and examine those motivations behind evil acts.
Welcome back to our deep dive into evil. In part 1, we took a whirlwind tour of how different cultures and religions view evil. From ancient Egypt's serpent god all the way to the 10 abominations of Chinese philosophy. And it's clear this concept is anything but simple. So now that we've explored these, fascinating cultural interpretations, where do we go from here?
Well, I think we're going to dive into some even deeper waters now. We're going to explore some of the kind of thornier questions that philosophers and psychologists have been wrestling with for centuries.
Yeah.
Like, for instance, is evil something that can ever be necessary? And what are the motivations that drive people to commit evil acts?
Necessary evil. That almost sounds like a contradiction in terms. How can something that causes harm and suffering ever be considered necessary?
Yeah, it's a perplexing idea for sure. But some thinkers, like Martin Luther, actually believe that occasional kind of minor evils could have a positive effect in the long run. So he argued that sometimes committing a small sin could prevent someone from becoming overly rigid or obsessed with insignificant rules. It's kind of like the idea that sometimes you need to break a few eggs to make an omelet, right?
So it's like a moral vaccination. A little bit of bad to prevent a lot of bad.
So that's one way to look at it. And then there's this concept of necessary evil, which is often used to justify actions that are considered morally wrong, but are seen as necessary for achieving a greater good. And this idea is often invoked in political contexts, especially in international relations.
So like going to war to prevent a larger conflict or a dictator from committing atrocities.
Exactly. So theories of realism and neorealism in international relations, sometimes referred to as kind of realpolitik, often advocate for this pragmatic approach where ethical considerations take a backseat to kind of self-interest and maintaining power.
It's a bit unsettling to think that evil could ever be seen as necessary even in these kinds of extreme situations. It really challenges our sense of right and wrong.
It does, doesn't it? But it also highlights just how complex moral decision-making can be, especially when you're dealing with these really difficult social and political issues. Sometimes the choices we face aren't really between good and evil, but between different shades of gray.
And this is where critical thinking comes in, right?
Absolutely.
We need to be able to carefully weigh the potential consequences of our actions and make informed choices even when there's no easy answer.
Exactly. We can't just blindly follow these predefined notions of good and evil, we really need to engage in thoughtful deliberation and consider multiple perspectives.
So if we circle back to our earlier discussion about whether evil is even a useful term, maybe the answer is it depends on how we use it. If it helps us grapple with these complex situations and make more informed choices, then yeah, it has value. But if it leads to these simplistic judgments and, demonization, then we really need to tread carefully.
I think that's a very insightful observation. The key, I think, is to avoid using evil as a label that shuts down critical thinking and empathy, and instead use it as a starting point for kind of deeper exploration and understanding.
So instead of just slapping the evil label on something, we should ask ourselves, why? What are the underlying factors that led to this? What are the different perspectives involved?
Exactly. And this leads us to another fascinating question that psychologists have been grappling with, and that is, what are the motivations that drive people to commit evil acts? Are some people just born evil, or are they shaped by their experiences?
That's a question that has haunted humanity for, ages. Are we born with this capacity for evil, or is it something that's learned or triggered by certain circumstances?
There's no easy answer, and researchers have kind of explored this wide range of theories. Some point to biological factors, arguing that certain brain structures or hormonal imbalances might predispose individuals to aggression or violence.
So it's like they're wired differently.
That's one theory. But then others focus on environmental factors like childhood trauma, social isolation, or exposure to violence. For example, studies have shown that children who grow up in abusive homes are more likely to exhibit aggressive behavior later in life.
So it's about the experiences that shape us, the wounds that can kind of fester and lead to destructive behavior.
That's another perspective. And then there's the influence of social factors like group dynamics and ideologies that can desensitize individuals to violence and can make it easier to commit atrocities. Think about how propaganda and hate speech can be used to dehumanize entire groups of people, and then it makes it easier to justify their mistreatment.
It's like that chilling phrase, you can get people to do anything if you tell them it's for the greater good.
Exactly. And I think that the Stanford prison experiment, conducted by Philip Zimbardo back in the 1970s, provides a really stark illustration of how quickly ordinary people can adopt these cruel and abusive behaviors when they're placed in positions of power.
That experiment was truly disturbing. It showed that even, seemingly good people can be corrupted by power and social pressures. It makes you wonder how much of our behavior is truly our own and how much is influenced by kind of these external forces.
That's a profound question. And it kind of takes us back to that debate we touched on earlier. Can we truly call a person evil, or should we focus on their actions?
It seems like such a tangled web. How do we untangle those threads of biology, environment, social pressures, and individual choices to understand what drives someone to commit evil acts?
It's one of the most challenging questions facing psychologists and social scientists.
Yeah.
And while there might not be a single definitive answer, I think exploring these different perspectives can help us to better understand the complexities of human behavior and, develop more effective strategies for preventing violence and promoting peace.
So instead of simply labeling someone as evil, we should strive to understand the underlying factors that contribute to their actions. It's about seeing the bigger picture, right?
Precisely.
Yeah.
And this kind of brings us back to the importance of empathy. Even when faced with these acts of horrific evil, I think it's crucial to remember that the perpetrators are still human beings, shaped by this complex web of experiences and influences.
It's a tough challenge, though, to find empathy for someone who has committed these, unspeakable acts.
It is, but I think it's precisely in those moments that empathy becomes most important. And it doesn't mean condoning their actions, but it does mean trying to understand the forces that might have contributed to their choices. And perhaps, through that understanding, we can find ways to prevent future tragedies.
It sounds like we're talking about a shift in perspective. Instead of viewing evil as this external force or this inherent quality in certain individuals, we're trying to understand it as a product of, complex interactions between individual predispositions, social influences, and situational factors.
You've hit the nail on the head. And this shift in perspective, I think, has implications for how we approach everything from criminal justice to conflict resolution to education. It's about moving away from those simplistic judgments and embracing a more nuanced and compassionate understanding of human behavior.
So, as we wrap up part two of our deep dive, it seems like we've uncovered more questions than answers, but maybe that's the point. Maybe the goal isn't to arrive at some definitive definition of evil, but to grapple with the complexities of this concept and explore its many
I
dimensions.
think you've perfectly captured the spirit of our exploration. And in part three, we're going to bring this conversation full circle and consider what this exploration of evil tells us about ourselves, our values, and how we navigate this complex world.
Welcome back to the final part of our deep dive into evil. We've journeyed through cultural interpretations, wrestled with those philosophical dilemmas, and even delved into the psychology behind evil acts. It's been a whirlwind, that's for sure, but now it's time to kind of bring it all home. So, what does this deep dive into evil tell us about ourselves and the world that we live in?
Well, that's the big question, isn't it? And I think it's one that each listener is going to have to answer for themselves.
Hmm.
Because, we've seen that there's no easy definition of evil. It's a concept that's shaped by culture, by religion, by philosophy, even by individual psychology.
Hmm.
What one person considers evil, another might view as necessary or justified or even, good.
Yeah, it's like that saying, one man's terrorist is another man's freedom fighter. It really highlights how subjective, I think, our perceptions of good and evil can be.
Exactly. And I think this realization is crucial because it encourages us to kind of be more critical of our own assumptions. We tend to think of evil as something out there, something that resides in other people. But this deep dive, I think, has really shown us that the potential for both good and evil exists within each of us.
Yeah, it's a humbling thought for sure. It reminds me of that line from the poet Alexander Solzhenitsyn. The line dividing good and evil cuts through the heart of every human being.
Ooh, that's a powerful quote. And it really speaks to the complexity, I think, of the human experience. We're not simply good or evil, but a mixture of both. And the choices that we make, the actions that we take, ultimately, determine which side of that line we lean towards.
So if we're kind of constantly walking this tightrope between good and evil, how do we navigate this complex world? How do we make choices that align with our values and contribute to, a more just and compassionate society?
Well, I think one of the key takeaways, at least for me, from our deep dive is the importance of critical thinking. We can't just blindly accept, labels or easy answers. We need to question our assumptions, consider multiple perspectives, and really just be willing to engage in those difficult conversations.
It's about stepping outside of our comfort zones and challenging those black and white ways of thinking.
Exactly. And this leads us to another crucial element, I think, empathy. And we've talked about how empathy can help us understand the motivations behind evil acts. But it's equally important in our everyday lives, right? It
Right.
allows us to connect with others, to bridge divides, and ultimately to build a more compassionate world.
Yeah, empathy is like that bridge that allows us to see the world through another person's eyes, even if we don't agree with them. It's about, recognizing our shared humanity.
Beautifully put. And I think cultivating empathy is essential if we want to create a world where evil has less power, right? It's about understanding that even those who commit terrible acts are still human beings shaped by this complex web of experiences. And it doesn't excuse their actions, but it does help us, I think, to see the bigger picture and work towards solutions that actually address those root causes of evil.
So it's not about condoning evil, but about understanding it, learning from it, and using that knowledge to, build a better world.
Precisely. And I think this brings us to a final and perhaps most important point. If we want to combat evil, we need to focus on cultivating good. We need to nurture compassion, promote justice, and really create systems that support human flourishing.
It's about, being the change we want to see in the world. It's about choosing kindness, standing up for what's right, and working to create a more just and equitable society for everyone.
Couldn't have said it better myself. This deep dive into evil has shown us, the dark side of humanity. But I think it's also illuminated this path towards a brighter future. And it's a path paved with critical thinking, with empathy, and a commitment to creating a world where good triumphs over evil.
Well, on that inspiring note, we've reached the end of our deep dive into evil. I hope this exploration has challenged your assumptions, sparked your curiosity, and maybe even left you with a renewed sense of hope.
As always, it's been a pleasure diving deep with you. Until next time, keep questioning, keep exploring, and keep striving to make the world a little bit better.
Okay, so get this. We're diving into the Little Ice Age today.
Ooh.
Imagine London's Thames so frozen over
Yeah.
that people held festivals right on the ice.
Wow.
Wild weather, right.
Absolutely.
You guys sent in this fascinating Wikipedia article on it.
Yeah.
So
Let's get into it.
let's get into it.
What's so fascinating about this period, well,
Yeah.
it was roughly from the 16th to 19th centuries.
Mm,
It really kind of breaks apart this idea
yeah.
that we have of a stable global climate.
Right. Like,
Like
I
what-
always thought ice ages were like
Yeah.
planet-wide deep freezes.
Mm-hmm.
But this little ice age, it sounds like it was more complicated.
It was,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
Exactly. It
Yeah.
wasn't this uniform chill.
Mm-hmm.
It was all about these regional shifts.
Okay.
And the North Atlantic
Yeah.
just got slammed.
Got hit hard, yeah.
Yeah.
And even figuring out when this whole chilly period started
Right.
is a bit of a puzzle.
It is a puzzle.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's not very clear.
Some point to 1250,
Okay.
when the pack ice in the Atlantic
Yeah.
began expanding rapidly
Mm.
and potentially,
Yeah.
that was linked to a massive volcanic eruption
Really?
in Indonesia.
Wow. Others say the real shift was around 1300,
Yeah.
when those usually reliable, warm European summers
Yeah.
started going haywire.
Completely crazy.
Yeah.
And then there's the wild card,
Ooh.
the Grindelwald fluctuation
The what?
in the 1560s,
Okay.
a time of
Yeah.
just extreme and unpredictable weather.
So this Grindelwald fluctuation.
Yeah, so the Grindelwald fluctuation refers to
Yeah.
a rapid advance of glaciers in the Swiss Alps during that time.
Wow.
You know, a very stark sign
Yeah. Yeah.
of the crazy climate shifts that are happening.
Yeah.
And the fact that we even have these different starting points,
Mm-hmm.
it really speaks volumes about how science
Yeah.
is always evolving.
It's like a detective story, right?
It is.
Where all the clues keep shifting.
Great.
Yeah. Speaking of shifting, let's focus on Europe
Okay.
during this time.
Right.
The Wikipedia article paints this vivid picture
Yeah.
of glaciers like overtaking villages in the
Mhm.
Swiss Alps.
Right.
People had to flee their homes.
It's incredible.
Can you imagine?
I know it's a stark reminder
Yeah,
of the power of nature,
totally.
and beyond the glaciers,
Yeah.
frozen rivers and canals all across Europe.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously picturesque for ice skating,
Yeah,
but it had huge consequences.
I bet.
Trade routes were disrupted.
Yeah.
Travel became a gamble.
Right.
Daily life totally upended.
And amidst this disruption, okay,
Yeah.
the Thames frost fairs.
Oh, yeah.
The river would freeze so solid,
Right.
people held these huge festivals right on the ice,
I know.
booths, games,
Freezing.
even oxen racing.
Wow.
The last one was in 1814.
Yeah.
Why can't we have that kind of fun today?
Well, I mean,
Yeah.
changes to the Thames
Okay.
and its bridges
Yeah.
have changed how it flows
Yeah.
and its depth.
Mm-hmm.
So these complete freezes
Okay.
are much less likely now.
Okay.
But still, to think
Yeah.
about how people adapted
Yeah.
and even found joy
Yeah.
in these extreme conditions,
Right.
it's amazing.
It's a testament to
It is.
human resilience.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right.
Yeah.
But the Little Ice Age
Yeah.
also had this darker side.
It-
The Wikipedia article mentions widespread crop failures,
Mhm.
leading to famines,
Right.
social unrest.
Yeah.
Some historians even draw this chilling connection to the witch hunts
Yeah.
of the time.
It's a tragic example
Yeah.
of how climate
Yeah.
can impact not just our physical world,
Right.
but our social and cultural landscapes as well.
It's true.
You know, in times of hardship and uncertainty,
Yeah.
people look for explanations.
Of course.
And sadly,
Yeah.
during the Little Ice Age,
Mm.
some turned to scapegoating
Yeah.
women,
Yeah.
often those already marginalized.
Wow.
They bore the brunt of this,
Of course.
accused of witchcraft,
Wow.
blamed for the failing crops and the harsh weather.
Yeah. It's a sobering reminder
They-
that these climate shifts
Yeah.
can make existing societal tensions and prejudices even worse.
Absolutely.
Yeah, but the Little Ice Age's impact,
Yeah.
it wasn't just confined to
England.
Europe, right?
It wasn't.
The Wikipedia article highlights
No,
how
it
the
did.
effects varied
Yeah.
dramatically
did.
across the globe. It wasn't a uniformly
Right.
cold world.
Right.
While Europe shivered, other regions experienced
Yeah.
different, sometimes even opposite effects. For example,
Yeah.
North America.
Okay.
Harsh winters
Mm-hmm.
played a significant role
Never
in,
feel-
in the struggles of early European settlements like
Right.
Jamestown
Yeah.
and Roanoke. Imagine trying to establish a new life
I know.
in a completely unfamiliar land
Yeah.
only to be met with winters.
Right.
Far more brutal
Yeah.
than anything you'd ever experienced before.
Yeah.
Those early colonists really had their work cut out for them.
They did.
And what about Mesoamerica?
Oh, yeah.
They felt the chill too, right?
Absolutely.
Oh.
Cooling periods.
Mhm.
Disrupted civilizations all across Mesoamerica.
Wow.
And to make matters worse,
Yeah.
volcanic eruptions in the region
Oh, no.
added to the turmoil.
Wow.
The Yucatan Peninsula
Mm-hmm.
and sites like Lake Pompal
Yeah.
in Mexico
Okay.
show evidence of significant cooling and environmental shifts.
Wow. It's incredible how
Uh-huh.
interconnected
It is.
the world's climate is.
Right.
One region might experience freezing temperatures
Yeah.
while another is facing drought or
Yeah.
increased rainfall.
Exactly.
And speaking of interconnectedness, the article also delves into Asia during the Little Ice Age.
Wow.
What was happening there?
So in Asia, we see evidence
Okay.
of intensified typhoons in China,
Okay.
potentially contributing to the Ming Dynasty's decline.
Really?
It makes you wonder
Yeah.
how many historical events
Yeah.
that we just view
Mm-hmm.
through a purely political or social lens
Yeah.
might also have been influenced
Yeah.
by these larger climate forces at play.
Right. It's like
Right.
climate is this hidden hand
Absolutely.
shaping the course of history.
It is.
Sometimes subtly,
Mm-hmm.
sometimes dramatically.
Yeah.
And those lands down under
Yeah.
Australia and New Zealand,
Right.
did they experience the same chill as Europe?
Well, interestingly,
Yeah.
Australia and New Zealand initially
Okay.
saw an increase in rainfall
Oh, wow.
during the early part of the Little Ice Age,
Okay.
but then a drying trend emerged.
Interesting.
These shifts had a big impact
Yeah.
on the environment, particularly after
Mhm.
European colonization
Okay.
and the introduction of new farming practices.
Right.
It makes you wonder
Yeah.
about how human actions,
Mm.
even centuries ago,
Yeah.
might have interacted
Right.
with these broader climate patterns.
It's like this ripple effect,
It is.
isn't it?
to-
One change triggering another and
Yeah.
another
Yeah,
across vast distances
Yeah.
and time scales.
right,
And to think the Little Ice Age even left its mark
right.
on Antarctica.
It did.
The Wikipedia article mentions that
Yeah.
ice cores
Yep.
from that period
Yeah,
provide valuable clues
they do.
about this era of
Mhm.
global climate fluctuation.
It seems even the most remote corners
Yeah.
of our planet
Mm-hmm.
weren't immune.
Weren't immune. Yeah.
Yep.
It truly highlights
It does.
the global scale of
Yeah.
this event.
Right.
But now,
Yeah.
the big question,
The big question.
what caused this dramatic shift?
In Earth's climate.
Well, the Wikipedia article that you sent in
Mm-hmm.
lays out some key suspects,
Okay.
and some are pretty surprising.
Okay, let's hear it.
All right, yeah.
I'm ready to uncover the
Yeah.
culprits
Okay.
behind this global chill.
Let's do it. Well, for starters, Earth's orbital cycles
Okay.
were already in this long-term cooling phase.
Okay.
You see, the way our planet orbits the sun,
Yeah.
it isn't perfectly circular. It wobbles
Yeah.
and tilts
Okay.
over very long periods,
Mm-hmm.
which affects
Yeah.
how much solar radiation we
Okay.
receive.
So it's like Earth was already on this slow march toward
Yep.
cooler temperatures.
Exactly.
And then other factors came
Lisa?
into play.
Precisely.
Okay.
And one of those factors was,
Yeah.
believe it or not, a sleepy sun.
What do you mean sleepy sun?
During the Little Ice Age,
Okay.
sunspot activity
Mm-hmm.
dramatically decreased.
A period known as
Yeah.
the Maunder minimum.
Hold on, the sun has spots.
It does.
Yeah.
Sunspots are these cooler,
Mhm.
darker areas
Okay.
on the sun's surface
Okay.
that are associated with
Yeah.
intense magnetic activity.
Okay.
And when sunspot activity drops,
Yeah.
so does the amount of solar energy
Oh, wow.
reaching Earth.
So it's like the sun was taking a power nap
Exactly.
and Earth felt the chill.
Right.
I never knew
Yeah.
the sun's activity could
Mm.
fluctuate so much.
It's remarkable.
It is, yeah.
And as if a sleepy sun wasn't enough,
Right.
we also had volcanoes
Oh, no.
Adding to the mix, multiple
Yeah.
massive eruptions during this period
Okay.
spewed ash and sulfur dioxide
Yeah.
into the atmosphere,
Oh.
acting like this giant sunshade.
Oh, so we have a cooler sun.
Right.
And now volcanoes are blocking even more sunlight.
Exactly.
No wonder things got chilly.
One particularly dramatic example
Yeah.
is the eruption of Mount Tambora
Okay.
in 1815.
Okay.
It was so powerful
Yeah.
that the following year,
Mm-hmm.
1816,
Okay.
became known as
Yeah.
the year without a summer
What?
in many parts of the
A
world.
whole year
Yeah.
without a summer.
Crops failed,
What?
temperatures plummeted,
To Korea.
effects felt globally.
It makes those snow days we get now seem like a walk in the park. But hold on.
Yeah.
The Wikipedia article mentions another possible culprit. Us humans.
Right.
Are you telling me
We're
we're impacting the climate?
It's a fascinating theory.
Even centuries ago.
Researchers suggest that changes in population,
Mm-hmm.
like those caused by the Black Death in Europe
Right.
or the decline of indigenous populations in the Americas,
Okay.
might have impacted forest cover.
Okay.
With fewer people to manage the land,
Yeah.
forests could have regrown, absorbing more carbon dioxide from the atmosphere.
So less carbon dioxide
Right.
in the atmosphere
Yeah,
could have contributed to the cooling.
potentially.
It's like an unintended consequence
Is.
of these historical events
Yeah.
impacting the climate
It's a reminder
in ways they could never have imagined.
that even seemingly unrelated events
Yeah.
can have these ripple effects
Yeah.
throughout Earth's systems.
It's true.
But while we might have inadvertently influenced the climate centuries ago,
Yeah.
our impact today
Right.
is far more deliberate
Yeah.
and significant.
That's a sobering thought.
It is.
But let's go back to Europe for a moment.
Okay.
And delve a bit deeper into those cultural responses to the Little Ice Age.
Yeah.
The Wikipedia article mentions how this period wasn't just about
Right.
adapting farming practices or
Right.
bundling up
Yep.
in warmer clothes. It had this profound impact on society as a whole.
The Little Ice Age coincided with this period of intense social and political upheaval in Europe.
Okay.
And some scholars argue
Yeah.
that the climate played a big role
Yeah.
in shaping those events.
Okay.
For instance,
Yeah.
some historians link the Little Ice Age
Okay.
to the resurgence of witch hunts.
Wait, are we talking about those witch trials
Yeah.
where women were accused of causing bad weather?
Exactly.
That's just heartbreaking.
It is.
It's hard to believe that people
no.
genuinely thought
I know.
that individuals could control the climate.
It speaks to the power of fear
Yeah.
and the human need
Yeah.
to find explanations
Yeah.
for events beyond our control
Yeah.
as temperatures dropped.
Crops failed.
Yeah,
Hardship spread.
right. People sought scapegoats.
Right.
Women, often those living on the fringes of society.
Yes. Or practicing traditional healing arts.
Right.
Became easy targets.
They did.
Accused of manipulating the weather.
Exactly.
Through witchcraft. It's a tragic reminder
It
that
is.
climate change can amplify
It can.
existing societal inequalities
Yeah.
and prejudices.
Absolutely.
But amidst these dark chapters,
Oh.
the Wikipedia article
Yeah.
also highlights stories
It does.
of human resilience and
Yeah.
adaptability.
Indeed.
One of the most striking examples is the story of the Dutch
Oh, yeah.
during the Little Ice Age.
Right.
While many European nations struggled to cope with the changing climate,
Yeah.
the Dutch
Mm-hmm.
seemed to thrive.
They did.
What was their secret?
Instead of succumbing
Okay.
to the challenges,
Yeah.
the Dutch embraced innovation.
Okay.
They adapted their agricultural practices, developing new techniques
Okay.
for growing crops
Yeah.
in colder conditions.
So they weren't just passively accepting their fate.
Right.
They were actively working. They were to overcome the challenges they faced.
Exactly.
That's impressive.
They
What other innovations did they come up with?
revolutionized their shipbuilding industry,
Okay.
constructing vessels better equipped to navigate icy waters.
Wow.
They harnessed wind power,
Mm-hmm.
building efficient windmills for drainage
Mm-hmm.
and other purposes.
Wow.
And they even used the frozen waterways
Oh, wow.
to their advantage
Okay.
in military campaigns.
It's like they turned a crisis into an opportunity.
Right.
They saw the changing climate not as a roadblock,
Yeah.
but as a challenge to overcome
Totally.
through ingenuity
Mm-hmm.
and resourcefulness.
It makes you wonder,
Yeah.
what other hidden stories of innovation
Yeah.
and adaptation are tucked away in history,
Right.
all driven by the need to respond
Yeah.
to a changing world.
It's like a ripple effect, right?
Is.
One change triggering another.
Yeah.
And another
Mm.
across vast distances
It's a reminder
and timescales.
that human history is often shaped by
Mm-hmm.
our relationship with the environment,
Yeah.
and that even in the face of adversity,
Yeah.
there's always the potential
Yeah.
for human ingenuity to shine through.
It's inspiring. Yeah.
It is.
But it wasn't just practicality
Right.
that defined the human response to the Little Ice Age.
Yeah.
The Wikipedia article also mentions
It's up.
how this era
Right.
influenced the arts,
It did.
particularly in Europe. Oh, right. I remember reading about the
Yeah.
surge in paintings
Right.
depicting winter scenes during this time.
I think that.
It's like the chill
Brilliant.
seeped into
Yeah.
the very canvas.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, it makes sense, though,
Yeah.
when your world is transformed
Yeah.
by snow and ice.
Yeah.
It's bound to leave a mark
Right.
on your artistic expression.
Precisely.
Artists like
Yeah.
Peter Bruegel the Elder captured both the stark beauty
Mm.
and the harsh realities
Right?
of winter life
Yeah.
during the Little Ice Age.
His painting Hunters in the Snow
Oh, yeah,
is so evocative.
it is.
It portrays this snow-covered village
Mhm.
with hunters returning from a long day,
Yeah,
their dogs trudging
yeah.
through deep snowdrifts.
You can practically feel the chill
Oh,
in
yeah.
the air just looking at it.
Right.
It's like stepping back in time
Right.
and experiencing the Little Ice Age firsthand.
And then there are those
Yeah.
vibrant, icy landscapes
Mhm.
by Hendrik Averkamp,
Okay.
depicting people skating on frozen canals,
Yeah.
engaging in winter festivities.
It's amazing how art
It is.
can transport us
It can.
to different times and places,
Yeah.
even offering a glimpse
History.
into the climate of the past.
It's remarkable.
Yeah, it makes you realize
Yeah.
that the Little Ice Age
Mm.
wasn't just some abstract historical event.
Right.
It was a lived reality. Yeah.
For millions of people.
It shaped their daily lives,
Right.
their culture,
Yeah.
even their art.
But what about those Stradivarius violins?
Oh, yeah.
The article mentioned
Yeah.
they might be connected
Right.
to the Little Ice Age.
Yeah. That's one of the most intriguing
How does that fit in?
aspects of this period.
Yeah.
Some researchers believe
Okay.
that the unique sound of Stradivarius violins
Yeah.
crafted during the Little Ice Age
Okay.
might be attributed
Wow.
to the denser wood
Oh.
that grew
Yeah.
during those colder years.
Okay.
The trees grew more slowly
Yeah.
in the colder climate,
Mm-hmm.
resulting in tighter growth rings
Okay.
and denser wood,
Mm-hmm.
which in turn may have contributed to
Yeah.
the exceptional resonance
Wow.
and tonal qualities
Yeah.
of these instruments.
It makes you wonder
Wow.
how many other subtle changes
Right.
in materials
Yeah.
or craftsmanship.
Happened during this time,
Yeah.
all because of the climate.
Yeah.
From frozen rivers to artistic masterpieces,
Yeah.
the Little Ice Age
Right.
left its mark
It
on
did.
history in ways
Yeah.
we're still uncovering.
It did.
But as fascinating as all this is,
Yeah.
I keep coming back to the same question.
Yeah.
What does it all mean for us today?
Right.
We're not facing another Little Ice Age,
Right.
but we are grappling
Yeah.
with a changing climate.
Yes.
Can we learn anything
Right.
from this period
That's the $1,000,000 question.
in history?
And that's exactly what we'll delve into
Okay.
in the final part
All right.
of our Little Ice Age
Yeah,
deep
yeah.
dive.
Oh,
We'll
my-
explore the legacy
Right,
of
right.
this chilly period
Okay.
and its relevance
Yeah.
to our warming world.
Let's do it.
Okay.
So we've journeyed through frozen rivers and volcanic eruptions and even a sleepy sun to understand the Little Ice Age.
Yeah.
But the big question lingers.
Right.
What wisdom can we glean
Yeah.
from this era as
Yeah.
we face our own warming world?
Well, the Little Ice Age,
Yeah.
it acts as this powerful lens,
Okay.
magnifying the interconnectedness
Yeah.
of our planet's systems.
Okay.
It reveals how
Mm.
even seemingly small changes
Yeah.
in solar activity,
Okay.
volcanic eruptions,
Yes.
Or, yes, even human actions
Yes.
can trigger
Mhm.
cascading effects
Yeah.
across the globe.
It's like a giant web,
It is.
right,
Yeah?
where tugging on one thread
Right.
can send vibrations
Yeah.
throughout the entire structure.
Absolutely.
It's both humbling
Yeah.
and a little terrifying to realize
It is.
how interconnected everything is.
Exactly.
And while the Little Ice Age was
Oh.
primarily driven by natural forces,
Right.
it highlights
Because.
the sensitivity of Earth's climate
Yeah.
to even subtle shifts.
Absolutely.
That sensitivity is something we need to keep front and center
Absolutely.
as we grapple with
Yeah.
human-induced climate change
Yeah.
today.
Right.
So it's not just about the scale of the change,
Right.
but the very fact
Yeah.
that our climate can be so easily tipped
Exactly.
in one direction or another.
What specific lessons
Yeah.
can we apply
Yeah.
from the Little Ice Age
Yeah.
to navigate the challenges of
Mhm.
our current warming trend?
Yeah, I like that. Okay. Well, for starters,
Okay.
the Little Ice Age underscores the importance of understanding
Yeah.
the regional nuances
Okay.
of climate change.
Okay.
It wasn't a uniform global cooling.
Right.
Different parts of the world
Yeah.
experience varying impacts.
Right.
Sometimes even opposite effects.
Yeah.
While Europe might have shivered
Yeah.
through those brutal winters,
Yeah.
other regions experienced,
Increased rainfall
Yeah.
or even warmer temperatures.
right, like it
For
was
wetter
right.
periods
Yeah,
in Australia and New Zealand,
Yeah.
that we talked about earlier.
exactly.
So a one-size-fits-all approach
Right.
to climate change
yeah,
just won't cut it,
it won't.
will it?
We need strategies tailored to specific regions
Mm.
and their unique vulnerabilities.
Yeah.
Understanding those regional differences
Yeah.
is key
Yeah.
to developing effective
Yeah.
adaptation and mitigation strategies.
Okay, so lesson one,
Yeah.
think globally,
Mm-hmm.
act locally.
Exactly.
What other wisdom can we glean
Man,
from?
it's Little Ice Age.
Remember how we talked about
Yeah.
those multiple factors at play?
Yeah.
From volcanic eruptions
Mm-hmm.
to a quieter sun?
Right.
The Little Ice Age
Yeah.
demonstrates how interconnected
Yeah.
Earth's systems are.
Right.
Changes in one area
Mm-hmm.
can have ripple effects across the entire planet.
Right. It's like a giant puzzle
It is.
where each piece
Yeah.
is intricately linked to the others.
We can't just focus
Right.
on reducing greenhouse gas emissions.
Right.
We need a more holistic approach.
Right. So we can't just
Yeah.
look at one thing.
Exactly.
We've got to look at everything.
Deforestation,
Right.
ocean acidification,
Mm-hmm.
changes in land, use, all of these contribute
Yeah.
to the puzzle
Yeah.
of climate change.
Addressing one piece in isolation won't solve
Right.
the entire problem. We need to see the bigger picture.
Yeah,
It's daunting,
it is.
but also empowering in a way, right?
Absolutely.
It means we have multiple levers we
Yeah.
can pull
Right.
to make a difference.
It's true.
So lesson 2,
Yeah.
embrace a holistic approach,
Exactly.
considering all the pieces
Yeah.
of the puzzle.
And there's one final lesson
Thank
from the Little Ice Age
Mm-hmm.
that I find
Yeah.
particularly inspiring,
Okay.
the human capacity
Yeah.
for resilience and adaptability.
Right.
We saw how communities responded
Yeah.
to those challenges,
Yeah.
adapting their farming practices,
Mm-hmm.
developing new technologies,
Yeah.
and even finding ways to thrive
Yeah.
amidst adversity.
Those resourceful Dutch traders come to mind.
Absolutely.
Right.
Yeah.
Turning those icy challenges
Right.
into opportunities for innovation.
Exactly.
It shows that even in the face of
Yeah.
profound environmental change,
Yeah.
human ingenuity can shine through.
It's a beacon of hope.
It is,
Yeah.
for our future.
So as we wrap up
Yeah.
our deep dive into
Yeah.
the Little Ice Age,
Right.
what's the one big takeaway
That's a good question.
you hope our listeners walk away with?
I hope they come away
Yeah.
with this sense of informed empowerment.
Okay.
Yes, climate change is a complex and
Yeah.
urgent issue.
Yeah.
But by learning from the past,
Right.
understanding the interconnectedness
Yeah.
of Earth's systems,
Yeah.
and embracing our capacity for innovation,
Right.
we can chart a path
Yeah.
toward a future
Mm-hmm.
that is both resilient
Yeah.
and sustainable.
It's true.
The Little Ice Age might seem like a distant chapter in
Yeah.
Earth's history,
Mm-hmm.
but its lessons
Yeah.
resonate powerfully
They do.
in our present.
Beautifully put. Thank
Thank-
you for guiding us through this
You're welcome.
incredible journey through time and climate.
My pleasure.
And to you, our listener.
Yeah.
Thank you for joining us
Yeah,
on this deep dive.
absolutely.
Keep exploring, keep questioning.
Yes.
And remember,
Mhm.
the past holds valuable lessons
It does.
for navigating the challenges of our present
Yeah,
and shaping the world we want
right.
for our future.
It's true.
Until next time, stay curious. Welcome back, everyone. We're diving deep into the world of diamonds today.
Oh, yeah, diamonds. I'm excited to talk about this.
We've got this Wikipedia article,
Mm-hmm.
and it's got some fascinating stuff in it. I think a lot of people will be surprised.
Yeah.
You know, when you think diamonds, you think jewelry, right?
Yeah.
Sparkly gems. But they're way more than that.
Right, right. Diamonds have all kinds of crazy properties that make them useful for all sorts of things. Like, they're incredibly hard,
Oh, yeah, I've heard about...
like the hardest natural material we know of.
Wow.
So that means they're super important in industry, like for cutting tools.
Makes sense, I guess. If you want to cut through something really tough, you need a diamond.
Exactly. Imagine trying to, like, cut through granite without a diamond.
Ooh, that'd be tough.
Yeah, nearly impossible.
So they're like nature's ultimate cutting tool.
Huh. Something like that.
And I've also heard they're amazing at conducting heat, right?
They are, like, exceptionally good.
How does that work?
Well, their thermal conductivity is just off the charts,
Huh.
meaning they can transfer heat away from things really efficiently.
So that's why they're used in electronics.
Yeah,
To
exactly.
keep them from overheating.
Right. You don't want your phone bursting into flames, right?
Uh-huh. Definitely not. So they're keeping all our gadgets running smoothly.
You could say that, yeah.
But there's one thing I read about diamonds that really blew my mind.
What's that?
Some blue diamonds, they're actually semiconductors.
Oh, yeah.
I always thought diamonds were like perfect insulators. How is that even possible?
It's pretty wild, right?
Yeah.
So it all comes down to impurities, basically.
Ah, so it's like flaws.
Kind of, yeah. In this case, it's boron.
Boron.
Uh-huh. Little bits of boron trapped inside the diamond structure, they change how electricity flows through it.
That's so cool. So they're not just pretty, they're like high-tech too.
Absolutely. And this opens up some really exciting possibilities, like using diamonds and advanced electronics, even quantum computing.
Whoa, quantum computing with diamonds.
It's cutting-edge stuff, yeah.
So, okay, we've talked about how useful they are, but where do they even come from in the first place? Like, how do diamonds even get here?
Well, most natural diamonds are super old.
Really?
Like billions of years old.
Wow.
And they formed deep, deep down, like way down in the Earth's mantle.
The mantle, isn't that like crazy hot?
Oh, yeah, incredibly hot. And the pressure down there is just mind-boggling.
So that's how they're made.
It is. That combination of heat and pressure, it transforms pure carbon into diamonds.
So it's not from coal, right?
Nope, that's an old myth. Diamonds and coal, they're totally different stories.
Huh, interesting. But if they form so deep down, how do they get up here to the surface?
Volcanoes.
Volcanoes.
Yeah, volcanic eruptions are the key. They basically punch through the Earth's crust, carrying all sorts of stuff from the mantle up with them, including diamonds.
So it's like the Earth is giving birth to these precious stones.
Uh-huh. That's one way to put it.
So do we just wait around for volcanoes to erupt to find diamonds?
Well, thankfully, there are some clues left behind. Geologists, they look for certain rock types that indicate a potential diamond deposit.
I think I've heard about those. Are they called, like, kimberlites or something?
You got it. Timberlite's one of them, yeah.
And what's so special about them?
Well, it's like a fingerprint, you know. Kimberlite tells us that the conditions deep underground were just right for diamonds to form.
So if you find kimberlite, you might find diamonds.
Exactly. It's a pretty good indicator. And there are a couple other rock types, too. Lamprite and lampifier.
Lamprite and lamprifier. Okay, I'll try to remember those. So it sounds like geologists are kind of like detectives.
Aha, yeah, in a way.
They use these clues to track down the diamonds.
Precisely. They've even got a rule, Clifford's rule, that suggests that diamonds are mostly found in the oldest, most stable parts of continents.
So like the ancient hearts of continents?
Yeah, basically. But of course, there are always exceptions.
Oh, I bet. Nature loves to throw curveballs.
It does, like the Argyle mine in Australia.
Argyle mine.
Yeah, it's one of the biggest diamond producers in the world.
And it's an exception to the rule.
Big time. It's in a geologically younger, more active zone.
Huh, interesting.
And what's really fascinating about the Argyle mine is, that, well, it's known for producing a lot of those rare pink diamonds.
Pink diamonds. From a younger mine. Okay, now I really want to be a diamond detective. But how do we get from these rough diamonds, straight out of the ground, to the sparkly gems we see in jewelry stores?
It's quite a process, actually. Real blend of art and science.
I bet.
It starts with the cutting and polishing, of course.
Right, I've heard about diamond cutters.
Yeah. They're incredibly skilled artisans. They examine each rough diamond super carefully, looking for inclusions, flaws, and figuring out the best way to cut it.
To make it sparkle the most.
Exactly. They want to maximize the brilliance and the fire.
Fire. What's that?
It's like the way the light dances inside the diamond. The flashes of color.
Oh, cool. So diamond cutting, it's not just about shaping the stone.
Nope, it's about unlocking its hidden potential. And did you know that cutting a diamond can actually reduce its weight by a lot?
Really? Like how much?
Often, as much as 50%.
Wow, that's a lot. It's like you're sacrificing some of the rough stone to make it really shine.
You could say that, yeah. And this whole process, it often happens in specific places around the world.
Oh, yeah. Like where?
Well, Surat in India is a big one.
Surat.
It's like the global hub of diamond cutting. And there's also Antwerp in Belgium.
Antwerp, I've heard of that.
Yeah, it's another major center. And Tel Aviv in Israel, too.
So these places are where the diamond magic happens.
Pretty much. Generations of artisans honing their skills. It's amazing, really.
So we've gone from deep inside the earth to a mine, to the hands of these skilled artisans. What happens next?
Well, once a diamond is cut and polished, it needs to be graded, to determine its value.
Oh, yeah, I've heard about diamond grading.
Yeah, it's all about the 4 C's.
The 4 C's.
Carat, cut, color, and clarity.
Ah, right.
They all play a role in determining a diamond's worth.
So it's like a diamond report card.
Yeah, kind of. And color, that's a whole world in itself.
Oh, yeah, we talked about pink diamonds earlier.
Right. But you also have yellow diamonds, blue diamonds, even black diamonds.
So many colors. Where do they all come from?
Well, it all boils down to, impurities and stuff.
Impurities. Again.
Yeah, it's kind of like, those unique birthmarks or freckles that make each person special.
So flaws make a diamond more beautiful. That's kind of cool.
It is. Like nitrogen, it's one of the most common impurities. It can give a diamond a yellow or brown hue.
Huh. And what about blue diamonds?
Those are often caused by boron, the same stuff that makes them semiconductors.
Right. And what about green?
Green diamonds, they get their color from exposure to natural radiation.
Radiation? Wow, that's wild.
It is, yeah. So each color tells a story, about the diamond's journey.
It's like a secret history encoded in its sparkle.
Exactly. And then there are the super rare ones, the pinks and reds. They often get their color from what's called a plastic deformation.
Plastic deformation.
Yeah.
Sounds intense.
It is. Basically, the diamond's structure gets a bit twisted, and that changes how light interacts with it.
That's fascinating. So these colored diamonds, they must be super valuable.
Oh, yeah. Especially those with really vivid hues. Collectors and investors, they go crazy for them. Like, remember the Wittelsbach diamond, that famous blue diamond we talked about earlier?
Yeah, wasn't that sold for a fortune?
It was, yeah. Millions and millions. Colored diamonds, they're like the rock stars of the gem world.
I can see why. So we've covered color, but what about clarity? You mentioned that earlier. How does that affect a diamond's worth?
So clarity refers to the inclusions, those tiny imperfections inside the diamond.
Ah, right, like little flaws.
Yeah, exactly. And they use this thing called the GIA clarity scale to grade them.
The GIA clarity scale, what's that?
It basically rates diamonds based on how many inclusions they have and how visible they are. So like a flawless diamond, it has 0 inclusions.
Wow, so those must be really rare.
They are, yeah, and super valuable.
Makes sense. So basically the fewer inclusions, the better.
Generally, yes, but it's not always that simple. Some inclusions, they're barely noticeable, while others can actually make the diamond more interesting.
Really?
Yeah, they can create cool patterns or reflections. It's like saying a painting is less beautiful because it has a tiny brushstroke out of place.
Huh, that's a good point. It's those imperfections that make something unique. Okay, so we've talked about natural diamonds, but what about lab-grown diamonds? Are those actually real diamonds or just imitations?
That's a question a lot of people have, and the answer is yes, they are real diamonds.
Wait, really? But how?
They're created in a lab as opposed to forming naturally over billions of
So
years.
they're like made by scientists.
Exactly. They mimic the conditions deep inside the Earth, the intense heat and pressure.
Wow, that's amazing. So they're chemically the same as natural diamonds.
Identical, they have the same properties, the same sparkle, everything.
So they're like diamond twins separated at birth.
Uh-huh. Yeah, something like that. And while they're often made for industrial uses, they're becoming more popular for jewelry too.
Why is that?
Well, for one thing, they're more affordable.
That makes sense.
Yeah, you can get a bigger lab-grown diamond for the same price as a smaller natural diamond.
So it's like democratizing diamonds, making them available to more people.
Exactly. But, of course, there's still people who prefer natural diamonds.
Yeah, I can see that. There's something special about knowing that a diamond was formed by nature over millions of years.
Right. It's like a piece of history.
Exactly. Okay, so we've covered lab-grown diamonds, but what about those imitations? The ones that try to pass themselves off as the real deal?
Oh, you mean like cubic zirconia?
Yeah, cubic zirconia. And I've heard of moissanite, too.
Mm-hmm.
What makes them different from real diamonds?
Well, they might look similar at first glance, but they don't have the same hardness, durability, or brilliance. Cubic zirconia, for example, it's made from zirconium dioxide, which is much softer than diamond.
So it's like a cheap knockoff.
Basically, yeah. And moissanite, that's silicon carbide. It's actually harder than cubic zirconia, and it can sparkle even more than a diamond.
Really? More sparkle?
Yeah, it has a higher refractive index, meaning it bends light differently, but it still doesn't have the same fire and brilliance as a real diamond.
Huh. Interesting. But even though these fakes look pretty convincing, there must be ways to tell them apart, right?
Oh, absolutely. Gemologists have all sorts of tools and tricks.
Like what?
Well, for one, they can test the stone's thermal conductivity. Diamonds, they're great at conducting heat, while simulants like cubic zirconia are not.
Ah, so it's like a diamond lie detector test.
Haha, you could say that. And they also use things like microscopes and spectroscopes to examine the stone's structure and composition.
So no more getting fooled by a shiny piece of glass.
Yeah.
Science to the rescue.
Exactly. But, even with all the science and technology, there's still a lot to consider when buying a diamond, especially when it comes to ethics.
Right, because the diamond industry, it has a bit of a dark side, doesn't it?
Yeah, unfortunately. And I think one of the biggest concerns people have is about conflict diamonds.
Yeah, blood diamonds, I think they're called.
Exactly. Those are diamonds that are mined in war zones and used to finance armed conflict.
That's terrible. So what's being done to stop that?
Well, there's something called the Kimberley process.
The Kimberley process.
Yeah, it's an international agreement aimed at preventing the trade of conflict diamonds.
So it's like a way to make sure diamonds are coming from legitimate sources.
Exactly. It involves governments, industry, and civil society groups all working together.
That sounds promising.
It is. And while it's not perfect, it has made a significant impact. It's giving consumers more confidence that the diamonds they're buying aren't contributing to violence and suffering.
It's good to hear that something is being done. But are there other ethical concerns beyond conflict diamonds?
Yeah, definitely. There's also the environmental impact of mining.
Right, mining can be really destructive to the environment.
It can be, yeah. So there's a growing movement towards more sustainable mining practices.
And what about the workers?
Yeah, worker exploitation is a big issue in some mining operations.
So there's a lot to think about when buying a diamond. It's not just about how sparkly it is.
Exactly. It's about being an informed consumer, asking questions, doing your research, and choosing diamonds that align with your values.
And it sounds like lab-grown diamonds offer a good alternative.
They do, yeah. They bypass a lot of the ethical concerns associated with mining, but at the end of the day, it comes down to personal choice.
Right, what matters most to you. So we've talked about where diamonds come from, how they're graded, the ethical considerations, and even the rise of lab-grown diamonds. It's pretty clear that the diamond industry is going through some major changes.
It is, yeah. Technology, ethics, consumer demand, it's all shaking things up.
So with all these changes happening, what do you think the future holds for diamonds?
Well, I think the future of diamonds is, it's pretty bright, literally.
Haha, good one.
Yeah.
But seriously, what do you see happening?
I think lab-grown diamonds, they're going to keep getting bigger. More and more people are going to choose them.
Because of the ethical concerns.
Yeah, partly. And the price, of course. Not everyone can afford a giant rock from a mine, but a lab-grown one, that's more doable.
Right, it's like opening up the diamond world to everyone.
Exactly. And the technology, it's just going to get better and better.
So you think lab-grown diamonds could actually replace mine diamonds.
I don't know about completely replace, but they'll definitely have a big impact. It'll come down to personal preference, really. Some
Yeah.
people, they'll always want that natural diamond, something that was formed by the earth over billions of years.
I get that. It's like the difference between owning a vintage car and a brand new one. Both are cool, but in different ways.
Exactly. And imagine with lab-grown diamonds, you could even customize them. Pick the exact color, clarity, shape, everything.
Wow, your own personalized sparkle.
Pretty cool, huh? But I think there will always be a place for natural diamonds. That sense of wonder, that connection to the Earth's history, it's powerful.
It is. It's like holding a piece of time in your hand.
Exactly. And honestly, who knows what the future holds? Maybe we'll discover new types of diamonds, new ways to use them, new things about them that blow our minds.
Well, that's what makes learning so much fun, right?
Yeah,
There's always something new to discover.
absolutely. So to everyone listening, keep those minds open and those questions coming.
And remember, the world is full of sparkle, whether it's from a diamond, a star, or even just a good idea. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.